Right, he's now got to the stage that I want him to be at, given where we are in the painting process. So what I thought I might do now is just revisit this drab colour that I painted on these figures here. And if you remember, this was a US olive drab. I've got this brown violet that I've used historically, or previously, sorry, for these types of colours. So I'm going to just use that. Now, I wouldn't normally be doing this, but again, I'm trying to differentiate these as being the lower quality, lower class troops. Excuse me, that white's playing havoc with the camera. Let's move that out of the way. There we go. So we'll sort that out by putting the same raised highlights on these figures, and then I'll come back and show you the result. Okay, so I've put some lightning colour on there, if you see what I mean. It's just had a nice effect. It's still quite greeny and browny, which I think is perfectly suitable for those lower class troops or those poorer members of society. What we're going to do now is move on to paint the brown on some of the weapons, so the bows, the spear shafts. Now, sometimes, normally I would do this a little bit differently, but again, just for speed, I'm going to try and pick up all of these at the same time using the same basic set of colours. So I'm going to be using the Foundry drab sequence, and I tend to use the A and the B. So I'm just going to, this is what the B looks like, and I'll put some grain effect on once I find the B in the sequence. So I'll start that shortly and give you a shout back. Okay, I've located the Foundry drab A, which is this sort of colour. I think that's perfect colour for spears. Again, it gets good coverage, so I'm going to cheat and use it straight out of the pot for speed. Excuse me. Whoa. Again, what we're trying to do here is obviously cover up the black of the primer. Got a little bit of fluff there, we need to get rid of that. Trying to leave the hand in place if we can. And just leaving plenty of space for the metallic of the head of the spear. So not the trickiest part of the process. What I am going to do is use the hairdryer in a minute to speed up the drying process, so again I don't knock this when I'm moving the figures around. Oops. Or indeed hit other figures while you're painting them. Figure painting is all about building up the appearance of the figure over time, and I do feel like once you get to this sort of stage, every colour you add begins to make a real difference to the overall effect. And really all you're trying to do is make sure there's no obvious bits of black visible from any point of the figure. So okay, he's done. So the rest of them are going to carry on being done the same way. I tend to do muskets slightly differently, so we'll come back to those in a minute, but I'm going to do the bows, the handles for the axes, etc., all in this drab, and let you know. So muskets I tend to paint in a slightly darker colour. If you look at any sort of pictures of muskets, they tend to be very sort of dark. My sort of go-to is a peaty brown, which I tend to use, or occasionally a Vallejo sort of sequence ending in a flat brown. But we'll just try this one quickly on these musket guys and see how we feel. Again, I've chosen a slightly lighter musket colour here because the whole unit is a little bit more showy, shall we say. There's quite a lot of metallic bands on muskets in general. Whether we should be calling these muskets or arquebus is a bit debatable, depending on exactly on what sort of time period we think we're in. So it doesn't hurt to leave some of the black lying around when you're doing a musket, just because it tends to sort of fit in with the theme of the metallics of the firing mechanism, etc. Again, I'm trying to leave the line between what is obviously the barrel of the weapon and the stock. And I'll just check underneath. No one would ever see this, but I know it's there, so I'm going to paint underneath. Just make sure that's covered. And to be honest, that's enough for muskets. And I'll do the other one, and then we'll come back again. Right, so there's quite a few straps on the armour, and just in general, really. So I'm going to try and do those quickly with a Foundry Spear Shaft 13A. I don't tend to use this for spears. I'm not sure if that was actually intentional or not, but I never found it particularly satisfactory. I sometimes use it for bows or pouches. I think it's a very leather-looking finish. So we've got a couple of areas like this on the figures that we're going to just tackle now with this sort of strapping colour. And again, I wouldn't normally do them all the same, potentially. Might do something a bit fancier for the samurai, but I just want to do this quickly. So that's fine. What I'm also going to do is cheat a bit and put it on the tie around the arrows. The arrows, by the way, I did just in the same drab colour. I did the bow because it's not near the bow. Had this been near the bow, I would have done a different colour. But I might as well use the fact that it's away from it to adopt a different sort of approach. This can be a little bit tricky as it goes into the sort of neck area, but if we can try and keep that away, that would be good. Because I've got the straps there, for the same reason I wouldn't do everything the same colour. I'm not going to do the cord on the helmet the same colour brown either, so I'll choose something different for that. And I'm also going to do this waistband slightly differently. So I'll just finish off the straps on the others and keep you abreast of progress. Right, so next thing is waistbands. What I'm going to do with the waistband is start with a Foundry Foundry Boneyard 9A. Oops, decides to focus in on that. Doesn't like that very much. There you go. It's that sort of colour. So you end up getting, like an off-white, which I think is perfectly fine for a lot of situations. And these guys will take it quite well. So we might as well start with this archer. I'll do the banding around there, and we'll see what effects we get. Again, I would always actually recommend taking the time to stir the paint rather than try and cut corners. It will come back to bite me later on. Part of the reason I'm happy with a slightly thinner approach here is that I want that slightly rougher feel, but also I think it will help it dry a bit quicker. We are talking troops here who were not the wealthiest individuals. Okay, that's fine. So again, just at that stage, we've created a nice differentiation between the two armour pieces. We've started to really pick out the actual lighter bits that we've painted on the armour. We started to get some good shaping around the bow quiver So yeah, quite pleased with that figure. I'll do the rest of the straps and then share it with you guys. Okay, so the banding's on all of the figures. I've even done it for the samurai types, just because I think what we'll do with those is just pay more attention on the terms of the highlighting to give us that sort of more wealthy looking appearance. What I've decided to do with this guy here, I think, is do these sort of front parts of the coat in the same purple that I've got on the cloth colour, because I think it will help to tie it in a bit, and then I can go back and do some patterning on the coat with a much lighter colour, like a white or even a lemon. So we'll just run this down here and see what we think of this. I know this is sort of overpainting something I've already done, but there's method in the madness here, and that it will give us that opportunity for a bit of decoration. And the decoration, I'm just going to literally swirl it around so that it implies a sort of mixed design or a mixed pattern. And I think I'm just going to get rid of any sort of hint of that moss colour inside by just making sure I take the brush down and overpaint that line. And the edge bit is the bit I'm going to have to go most careful of, because I don't want to go too mad on that and run into the moss. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to let that dry now, probably with the aid of a hairdryer shortly. Whilst that's taking effect, what I might do is just do some facial hair on the main set of figures. So really what I do here is, if I which one? I'm trying to find one with a, I think this guy's got a moustache, is that right? Yeah, this guy's got a moustache. So what I'm going to do is line in black where that facial hair should be. This is one thing you need to go very careful about, because obviously it could ruin your day, given how much painting and effort you've put in. But again, it's easy to rectify with a bit of flesh coat, base coat if you need to. So I'm just going to try and show you what I mean, because I don't want to put the second stage of flesh coat on until I've got any sort of facial hair dealt with. And also what I'm going to do is areas like this where I overran the first place on the figure with the flesh coat, just make sure we pick those up as well. And I say it's just an opportunity to sort of sort a few crimes out. I can see one already there, which is where I've missed the section of the flesh, so we'll be going back and sorting that out shortly. But yeah, just want to run through all of the figures, repeat that sort of process, make sure any facial hair is picked out, and then I'll see you shortly. Okay, whilst that's drying, I'm going to pick up a different type of brown. I think I'm just going to use a burnt umber, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this on the straps on the helmets, and then the lower class troops will either stay pretty brown, or it will form a nice little base coat for the gold that I might put on the upper class warriors. So if I just do this one here, again, I'm only doing this because gold doesn't really take on black very well. I think this is just going to be a nice underside colour, or underneath colour, if we don't quite get the gold effect coming through. So yeah, that's enough of that. As you can see, the face starting to take shape now. Remember, we haven't actually done, in fact, I'll just while I'm here, just might as well use this paint to quickly do that one. yeah, just remember that we haven't actually done the mid coat for the face yet, so this is still looking a bit dark and orangey. So I'll just carry on doing that on, as I say, anything where we've got helmet strap or neck chains like this, and see you shortly. Okay, so I've reopened the Boneyard colour just for a couple of reasons. One, I did the bandage type undercoat for here, but also now that I've got this purple colour on here, I'm going to consider what this might look like if I was to swirl this around on the as a sort of decorative thing. And what I'm trying to do here is, as I say, create some nice little swirly patterns which imply that we've got a bit of you know, a crazy pattern going on here. So I'm not really trying to do anything distinct. Far from it. I'm trying to make that a sort of blend of dots and swirls and anything that implies, you know, a pattern has been put on the clothing, on the coat. Doesn't matter if you get a few darker or more distinct areas, that can really help. And then you want plenty of sort of mixed sort of nonsense going on. So from a distance, that looks like a patterned element. What I'm going to do is use a different colour as well, just to help accentuate that. So what's next is I've forgotten to put my brown on the sections on the helmets, and I'm going to make those brown because I want to put the gold on. So I'm just going to do those now, and give them 5 minutes to dry. You don't really need to do this if you're going to do them silver. I just find gold works a lot better with a second coat other than just primer, but B, a sort of browny fleshy colour even can work really quite well. And whilst that's drying, I think we'll tackle the tricky subject of lacing, because I think that's probably what's keeping most of you interested in this video. So we'll deal with that now, given that the armour's dried enough. So if I'm going to do white lacing, what I want to do is start off with quite a... Well, I am going to sort of two-tone most of the lacing, and what we'll do is we'll find the Foundry Triad. This is obviously the top coat for the white lacing. So we'll find the 33A and we'll start to prep the figures. Okay, so here we go. This is the sort of colour differential between the two. So that might not look quite distinct enough. And now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking as well, maybe we should consider the top coat in the black Triad, which I know sounds a bit crazy, but that's that colour. So I'm going to start with this one and stick to what I've normally done. I don't know why I'm doubting myself on this particular occasion. And I think just for convenience, I'm going to do this one with a blue lacing, this one with a white lacing. And I think the cheaper quality troops, as it were, we'll do in like an off-white, maybe with the Moss Triad. So I'm going to just get prepped. So this is definitely one for the headset. And what we're going to do is two things. We're going to just try and pick out a few areas in here which are close to that waistband and contain most of the lacing. And you don't have to be as distinct in there at all. Where we do have to go careful is now that we're doing these lines here. What we want to do is absolutely not what I've just done and go into the side. What we want to try and do is stick to following the pattern of the lacing if you can see it, or create your own one if you can't. And in a minute we're going to just highlight certain sections. We're not going to try and recreate all of it, but as you can see, we've done a little bit there. Let's do some lacing up here. Okay. That may look bad at the moment, but believe me, that's not terrible. And what we're trying to do is almost highlight the fact, or bring out the fact that it's got this sort of layered effect from the different plates of armor that we're seeing. Now there's a couple of sections around here where we've got the tags of the armor showing, the tags of the lacing showing through. So I do want to make sure that we bring that out. Probably wouldn't be noticed on the figure, but you know, we know that they're there, don't we? So we want to be faithful to the sculpting. Okay. And if we've got any issues here where we think either the lacing is not even enough, or in my little section there that I went over, we can line that in shortly. But if we just do the helmet now, what I'm going to do is bring it this way across the helmet. Apologies, you probably can't see that, so I'll try and change my position. So I'm trying to go across the figure like that, if that makes sense. Except where I'm having to go down in those areas. Again, I find working left to right a little bit easier. Okay. So as the first run through, that's not too terrible. Don't know what you think of that as far as you can see on the camera, but not too bad. So this one's going to be a blue, so we won't want the grey for that one. So I'll get prepped with the blue and join you shortly. So blue for me is the Foundry Triad, and I'm going to start dark with the 20A. So I've lost the top there because I've had to replace that. And then we'll probably go straight to a C because I want that sort of stark differentiation. So a quick shake of the pot. Again, blue tends to be quite forgiving in terms of usage out of the tin, so we'll stick with that. Move those out of the way. And remember, if we want to, we've got a third level in the triad of the terracotta that the armour is painted in. And yes, this does require steady hand and a bit of concentration. But if the sculpting is good, more often than not, you'll find the raised part of the lacing, and it will treat you kindly. Again, don't worry if you don't hit this first time around. It just makes it a little bit slower, but you can tidy all of this up quite happily. I'm trying to go down the figure just to give you guys a view as to how this is going on. But in reality, you'll find a position that works for you. I tend to find this sort of left to right approach most of the time. If I'm on a really delicate bit, that's what suits me. But I'll carry on doing that, and then we'll show you the effect. Okay, so there we go. We've got the figure with the dark blue around the waistband, and then each of the lines drawn in. And when does it start to look like lacing? Well, it starts to look like lacing when we put the dots on. And then what we're going to do with that is pick out the sections that appear to be raised on the sculpting, or if they're lacking because the model's not great, then we're going to put our own ones on. What I'm going to do first is I think there's just I'm not sure any of these have particularly got lacing, or this figure has. So I'm going to just do the moss triad on those. Oops. So I'll start with the 29A, do the same thing on those cheaper looking models as opposed to the nobles, and see you shortly. Okay, so that stage is done. Just for completeness, you can see the sort of light effect that we've got on the lacing. I'm going to go now on to a couple of other things. I think I might paint the gold now that I've given that a little bit of time to dry. But I'm going to have to charge up the camera and the laptop, so I'll join you shortly.